So it begins. Welcome to the CreepGeeks Podcast, Season 5, Episode 223.
In this fine episode, we explore On the Trail of UFOs, Dark Sky, Lost Artifacts, and upcoming events.
Yeah. So here we go. Welcome to the podcast. It's been a minute.
Yep.
Since we started over. Sometimes that happens. You get rolling into your podcast and you're like, let me go ahead and just let's just restart this
whole thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's just throw the whole thing in the trash and start over. And that's kind of what we did. But anyway, we have a lot of good stuff to talk about, and that's part of the problem. See, when you have a lot of good stuff to talk about, you kind of go and kind of get too deep into it, and then you realize, well, I forgot.
Pigeonhole yourself into one topic.
Or you go off on a tangent and you lose the path of whatever point you were trying to make. And you're like, okay. So, yeah, it's all good. So anyway, 223 episodes so far. And this particular episode is something that we'd like to talk about called weird stuff, paranormal stuff, creepy stuff. We kind of like to talk about it all, right? But every once in a while we come across something that we think is interesting to the point where we should let people know, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always look forward to is the documentaries that get put out there, the series that get put out there, the shows that get put out there that I think are good, and I look for them every time I see them, or I'm excited that when something pops up, I'm going to watch it. And the excitement, right? Yeah. When you run across a series, it's almost like a hidden gem. When you run across something that you know, that you watch, that you think is great, and you always look forward to it, right? Uh-huh. And there's all sorts of TV shows out there that some people like, and will come up and say, have you ever seen this? And you're like, no. And then later on you check it out and you're like, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you've got a secret. And people go, hey, and you're like, hey, have you ever seen this? No. Well, you got to check it out, man. You'll like it. And then later on that person comes up and goes, dude, that was great. Or
like me the other week, somebody recommended the same movie that I had recommended to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like they're telling you a big secret. And you're like, oh, I see. So whenever I see something from Small Town Monsters, I get excited because I like where it's going. Mm-hmm. I like the subject matter. I like how it's going to be told. So I'm genuinely excited and like, I'm going to check it out. I'm to the point where I'll save it.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you ever had like Girl Scout cookies, the chocolate peppermint deals, the little mints, the thin mints, you kind of hide them in the freezer way in the back so nobody else will get them. You save it for later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. So, all right. This particular podcast, if you're very first time tuning in, we talk about all sorts of strange things, but we talk about, basically it's offbeat news podcast. We talk about everything from UFOs to cryptids to monsters. It's just weird stuff in the news and things we think are interesting. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. Yeah. And we try to have a little fun with it. And we broadcast our paranormal and weird news stories from an underground bunker in the mountains of western North Carolina.
Yep.
So there you go. Sets us for the scene for what we're going to talk about. So, moving into the podcast, let's do this. If you'd like to get a hold of us and talk to us, you can certainly do that. We have a Facebook page that you can come and check out some stuff and share some stuff and read some stuff. And the name of that Facebook page is what?
The Facebook page is going to be CreepGeeks Podcast.
Yep.
And our group is real easy to find, CreepGeeks Facebook group.
Yes.
Now, if you'd like to call the show and leave us a message, and I'm not talking, hey, call us back. You can actually leave a detailed message. That phone number is going to be 575-208-4025, or visit creepgeeks.com. Click on that Contact Us button on the corner of the blog. So, yeah.
There you go. Okay, so what do you think about the latest offering from Small Town Monsters? You can tell everybody what it's about. You know what I mean?
On the Trail of UFOs, Dark Sky is a continuation of their first, documentary, which was On the Trail of UFOs. This one, however, takes more...
the first documentary series?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, it's a singular piece, and it seems to be more focused. They, on one particular region, I would say. And it's basically combining not just the phenomenon of UFOs, but trying to weave together some of that historic detail and some of that folklore for that particular region of Appalachia. So with this one, I guess they're focusing mostly on western, like West Virginia and that like little corner section of Ohio, I guess. And I don't know. What else do I say about this?
See, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. We have a tendency to look at some of the stories that come out of like places like, West Virginia, and then even in North Carolina and other places, and you kind of look at them as being, grouped together with like high strangeness and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to West Virginia, they have a whole bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so you've got like Kecksburg UFO. You've got, of course, you got Mothman. You've got the Flatwoods Monster. You've got the Grafton Monster. So you've got a lot of things that have happened and been reported in basically in West Virginia, right?
Yeah.
And see, we live in western North Carolina, and we are in part of Appalachia as well. And this whole Appalachian mountain region, it runs all the way through, like from the corner, like you were saying, of Ohio, all the way down past North Carolina through Tennessee. There's a lot of weird stuff that occurs, and there's been, the legends and folklore and everything in this area, since it is so ancient, right?
Yeah.
It's something that this region, everybody has stories about, but it seems like some of the more, I don't want to say famous, but more popular or more retold stories come out of basically West Virginia. And Mothman, I think, really sort of made things kind of popular.
Well, they're better documented, and mostly it's because of the accessibility of that region. While us Southerners may consider it a little harder to travel up the Blue Ridge and upwards into Appalachia, that area benefited from a lot of journalists, a lot of researchers coming down from other areas like New York and Pennsylvania and even parts of Ohio.
Yeah, because like Kecksburg was actually in Pennsylvania, but it was part of the UFO flap. It seemed like it happened in West Virginia as well. Because you've got like Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio all sort of in this sort of area there.
Yeah.
Where some strange things have happened. So with this particular series, it's On the Trail of UFOs, Dark Sky. And they do, I think, a masterful job of sort of putting in all together these, each one of these topics is a subject into itself, like the Flatwoods Monster, right? And Mothman and UFOs and everything else that occurs in the area. They have a tough job to put it all together succinctly and make it actually digestible, right?
And that's the thing about Small Town Monsters, you can digest it without having to constantly rewind it.
Yeah, because I can't, we're sitting here and we're trying to talk about, some of these things, but each one of those sort of subjects are really popular. Like Mothman, there's people that made their entire 30 years of researching Mothman. You got Flatwoods Monster, right? You've got everything that seems to occur in West Virginia. They had the foresight to put it all together and have it make sense to where each one of those things can be talked about and digested, and you can move on with it and get to what's important, right?
And the good thing with that is they brought in, starting last year or so, they've started bringing in a folklorist, and they've started to bring in more hard copy history, this is documented, and trying to weave that into the story. So having that folklorist there and presenting, well, this is what has been going on for a while, or this is what's been reported for a while, and then let's tie the actual history in, mining and things like that. That gives the whole storytelling throughout the documentary, I guess, more weight to it, and you can follow along with that. It's a little easier than other things I've seen lately in media.
Yeah. So this is kind of one of those things where when you look at the story as a whole and the story it's trying to tell, how do you take all these parts and pieces and put them all together and make it interesting and have it sort of, sit in a way where you're not making everything so fantastic.
Yeah.
And blown out, and to make it this crazy, action. I'm trying to think of a word to describe some of the other movies and documentaries and series that we've seen, where everything is just so like the stuff you see on TV these days. Everything is over dramatized and it's got crazy sort of aspects to everything, and you're like, whoa.
Basically the equivalent of shock footage and clickbait almost.
Yeah, and those have their place, and they are very interesting to a certain degree. But if you're looking at things with more of a like skeptical / critical / I want to be more serious and get some like better and more realistic and more honest information.
Yeah.
This is the series that does it, right? I mean, this one, and then you've got the one that was before. All their movies are like that, to where you can take this story, whatever it is, and they go and they make their series about it, or a movie or show or whatever they're doing with it, and they let what evidence they have and the people, basically retelling and sort of reliving their experiences stand on its own.
Yeah, they let the history and the experiences shape the story in whatever film they're making, rather than one singular narrator with one singular perspective. Yes, on the trail of UFOs, Dark Sky, there is that perspective in there from Ms. Shannon LeGros, and her perspective is, I want to see, I want to experience similar to these UFO experiences and the UFO phenomenon that everyone we've interviewed has had. But that's such a smaller part of the overall story.
Yeah.
The story is what is presented with these witness experiences and the historical information and the folklore information. That's what builds a story rather than the singular, and I don't want to throw other stuff under the bus, but, this is what's happening. That type of stuff, that's not how I fall in line with the UFO community.
Yeah.
Well,
it just becomes one of those things where you're listening to people talk, and they're saying what their experiences are, and they're drawing off knowledge that they have, right, of the area and everything else involved. And it becomes one of those things where at the end of the day, a lot of what I hear makes more sense to me. It's a lot more credible. It's a lot more interesting. It's a lot more in lines of what an investigative report should be and an experience, and it's not.
And that's,
and I like that. And I think the older I get, the more I enjoy the experience coming from people, and they basically give us an idea of what happened, right? It's not one of these, stories that you see on TV in a way where it's like they present this information and leave you with basically a quick snippet of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they want you to believe it, and they move on to the next thing. Sometimes I want a little bit more, and I want to know the nuance that comes from somebody's experience. And since we like to go talk to people, having them tell you stuff and explain things that they've experienced, and they throw in some of these little small details, makes it all the more better for me.
And that's what you were going with, what you were mentioning, that whole nuance and that whole local perspective. This one, Dark Sky, they had Joe and Ron from Wild and Weird, West Virginia. They had those new localized people speaking about their experiences. They had that one couple talking about how they had their own theories about these strange things in the sky. They had the guy with the, I guess like the local businessman guy, and it was like,
I don't think that's his real name.
I know.
Local businessman guy. But yeah, I mean, it's, because, all we're seeing on television these days is these little quick shows you see, like,
I would rather have those localized, directly from the witness experiences than have the dramatized stuff that we're seeing, not just on TV, but just online in general, And to see, my thing is, I like seeing these witnesses or experiencers, and you watch them and you watch their faces and their reactions as they retell what they experienced. I really appreciate that.
So, for me, here's kind of what it boils down to. When I watch something that makes me want to go out and do something, that has way more impact. Now, when I watch, these series and the movies they have, I always feel like I want to go out and kind of do, right?
Yeah.
And this one's no different. It's like, hey, man. I think part of that is like, especially with this particular installment, right? The Dark Sky. I feel like the way it was presented and the way it was filmed with the angles and things like that and all the other stuff, right, is that I think it was designed, and I may be wrong, but I think it was designed in a way that sort of put you right in the middle of it. Like you are a crew member, right? You're a camera guy. You're like, you're the third camera guy. You're there.
Yeah.
And I like that, I don't know. It's just kind of a thing I noticed when I first started taking a look at it. I'm like, some of the shots that were used is like, I feel like I was standing there with them.
Yeah. Like a crew, like,
just like, I'm camera guy number 3, right? I'm just kind of standing there doing my thing. And I hope that's the case, right? Because it just is a good little trick because, some of the things that were said and how it was shot it just made you feel like you were standing there. You were with them when they were telling their story. You were hearing it firsthand. And it just made the whole thing a lot more personal.
Yeah.
So as terrible as we are with reviews, this particular review, right, this one has become one of my favorites. I like it.
Yeah.
I like the idea that they took something that is really a bunch of smaller subjects that could each stand on their own and become their own series and own movies. In some cases they have been, but put it all together and sort of did enough of that sort of background information to bring you into and sort of carry you into what they're trying to show you.
Help you make your own.
Yeah, because if you just, if you didn't understand why that area is what it is and has experienced what it has, right, to become sort of known, I guess, you wouldn't get why it's so important.
Yeah.
So you have to cover that background information.
And it's funny because...
And there's a lot of it there,
That is something that is definitely missing from not just television, because we keep going back to television because we live in an underground bunker and that's what we have, but just media and some of the videos that are out there online right now. That connection and providing it is lacking in what I'm watching these days. A lot of people are like, here's a spooky story, here's a scary encounter. Where when you look back at it, like especially here in Western North Carolina, there's a lot of similarities to what happens here in Western North Carolina that happens in West Virginia, that happens even in the Southwest. Things like certain types of folklore, certain elements of folklore that stick out, certain elements of basically settling America that stand out. Interactions with different cultures. Mining is really big in the UFO community, and there seems to be a very strong tie with mining, UFOs, and high strangeness. And they tie that in wonderfully, and I want to see an evolution of that in their next work because I feel like they've put it out there. They've started to place it out there, the breadcrumbs, and I want to see them build up to that. Because that inspires me, especially here in Western North Carolina, to want to make those connections as well.
Yeah. I think the word I've been grasping for, which seems to elude a lot of situations these days, is context. Mm-hmm. They give you the context.
Yeah.
And then from that context, you can go and you can enjoy the story they're trying to tell. I think so often these days, context is lacking.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, context was an integral part of telling any story. You had to put it in context so that way the storyteller could impart to I was going to say, what's the opposite of storyteller? Whatever.
The audience?
The story, yeah.
The audience.
There you go, the audience, right? You have to put it in context. And with that context, I think it gives you a deeper, fuller, better understood sort of idea that, hey, this is what we're trying to tell you.
Yeah, and I am going to go throw one show under the bus right now, and it's that show that's on TV, These Woods Are Haunted. And I
think they changed the name of it, but yeah.
Yeah, something like that. They change it up. I think all of it's owned by the same group.
Yeah, I think they do some re-edits and put it back out, like Terror in the Woods.
Yeah, and they talk about woods, talk about an experience, and that's it. And some good examples are things that have happened along the Blue Ridge Parkway. So now in popular culture, and I'm talking like my nephew's generation, they know the Blue Ridge Mountains are scary. They just don't know why. They've heard these legends or they've watched these shows. They don't know the context. They don't know the strife that happened with the settlers and indigenous people. They don't know the steel mining era, the mining eras and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They don't know that backbone to build off of why these mountains are so scary.
Well, I mean, if you look at the way things are these days with the whole, like, real quick sort of TikTok evolution with everything and, like, quick 15, 30 second, 1 minute, 3 minute sort of overviews of everything.
But that means you got to provide the context in, like, that first 3 seconds.
But they don't. They never do. And it's just kind of one of those things where I enjoy it because, honestly, you can watch On a Trail of UFOs, Dark Sky, and from there you can get a general understanding and go back and do some of your own researching on things like Mothman and, Flatwoods Monster and all of that stuff. It sort of whets the appetite to go do your own deeper research if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you're not, you can just watch it and it'll be interesting and you'll like it and be like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I had a good time. And you can move on to something else from Small Town Monsters.
And it's funny because, like you were saying, watch it and do your own research. Watching this made me go, we have an area close by to us that ticks off all these boxes, all these check marks as far as, what makes a place strange. And now I want to go research that place.
Yeah, it's almost like the Small Town Monsters series, it sort of hit that sort of common thing, right? Like, I think Small Town Monsters is brilliant because every small town has its own sort of monster lore, right?
Yeah.
Its own general weirdness, its own strangeness. And these guys, right? They go out there, and I use guys as a, sort of an encompassing sort of, I don't know, but they do a good job of taking the yarns and tales and accounts and everything from these small town, right? The scary stuff, and they put it out there, and it could be your small town.
It could be your community.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. Yeah. Like, Small Town Monsters is
your community, your neighbors, your family. Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, and I don't know. I thought it was really good. It's On a Trail of UFOs, Dark Sky. You can find it on iTunes and basically anywhere you can do video on demand. It's there. Check out their YouTube channel, our website too. We have links in our show notes because everything we talk about is in the show notes. And we're not good at reviewing videos and stuff, but I do say that with Small Town Monsters in general, man, if they have a movie, a series, or a show, I'm stupid excited about it, and I'll put it up in the refrigerator like Thin Mints. Just sneak
so
it
you
up
can
in
watch it and savor it later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because and I'll go back and watch them again, and I'll watch them a couple times. And I think if you have any kind of interest in this sort of thing in general, it's a good place to get good information. And then from there, you can sort of they put it in for me. They put it in the right context.
It's a good foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. So that's enough. That's enough about Small Town Monsters for that. For now.
Right. We do have links to, I guess, a trailer from them, as well as if you want to check out a documentary yourself on Amazon. Those links are in the show notes, along with everything else we talk about on this podcast episode.
Yeah, and if you happen to hit CreepGeeks.com and you can't find it, if you look over on the left-hand side, there's actually a link there, too. You can click it. It takes you to their website as well. Ooh. So, yeah, it's been there for like 2 years, I think. It's been in there for a while. Okay.
You got to update. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, you get a website. Nobody has a website anymore, right? It's all that stuff. So speaking of weird stuff, you put this article in here, which I thought was pretty strange. And, when you told me about it, I'm like, I just don't, I don't see, I guess I don't understand why this particular company, right, would be doing what they're doing. It's a strange thing. And this article link that you have comes from Smithsonian Magazine. Mm-hmm. Which is like the more polished, refined version of National Geographic, I think. You know what I mean? I always look at like Smithsonian as being like, oh, you get your pinky out when you're looking at Smithsonian Magazine.
Would you stop?
I don't know. It's just kind of a funny thing, and basically the article you have says Hobby Lobby forfeits rare Gilgamesh tablet smuggled from Iraq.
Yeah. So the whole, you were saying you're trying to figure out what's going on here. The backstory to this is kind of long, and I had to grab part of it from the New York Times, which of course has a paywall right now. And that is, Hobby Lobby runs a biblical Christian themed museum of history. And I guess starting over a decade ago, they started accumulating artifacts relating to Christian history. So antiquities, but not just Christian history, just antiquities in general. Anything that would talk about the culture of man from, I guess, that particular area, the cradle of Earth. I don't know. What do you call it? I don't know.
You mean like the cradle of civilization?
There we go. Cradle of civilization.
Okay, whenever I read stuff like this, I think of like Indiana Jones.
And that's exactly what happened in Iraq. I guess after the two different Iraq war things happening, lots of antiquities and lots of artifacts, sacred and otherwise, even everyday artifacts, were being smuggled out of Iraq, and some of them they had like their authenticity and their documentation forged. Some of them went to black market, and some went so far as to go into like actual places like Christie's, like full-on auction sites, real legitimate places. And once that got discovered, I guess the Department of Justice started investigating what was happening. Why was this rush of antiquities, not just from Iraq, but Egypt and other places as well? How did the market get so flooded with them? Well, it turns out organizations like Hobby Lobby and their museum were secretly buying up some of these things. Now, a lot of the articles say that Hobby Lobby and the people behind it, Steve Green, had no knowledge about collecting and authenticity and how to deal with unscrupulous dealers or smugglers and things like that. These articles are posing these organizations as being unknowing participants.
So basically what it boils down to, they thought they were buying antiquities.
Legally,
and they weren't.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily know because they're not known as,
yeah. And now
as an antiquities, okay. So they didn't know what they were doing. They were buying what they thought was like legitimately able to be bought and purchased and displayed.
Yeah.
Artifacts or antiquities from, let's just say, Old Testament times, because they're talking about, the cuneiform tablet from the Epic of Gilgamesh,
and which
is one of the oldest known works of literature.
Yes. And like as early as 2014, Hobby Lobby brokered private sales of these artifacts through Christie's, thinking that they had the right to buy them.
Well, I mean, if it's going through an auction house like Christie's, if you said, hey, this is listed with Christie's, I'm going to buy it, I would think that the provenance and all that stuff or provenance, I should say, is... and
it was like...
I wouldn't worry about it coming from Christie's. If it was like, crazy Uncle Greg's
yard sale
auction
Tennessee
site, and you buy something like, oh well, I guess much like if you go to a store like a thrift store or even like a pawn shop and you buy something, you're pretty much hoping that it's not stolen goods.
Yeah.
Well, when you go through Christie's, you would think that would not be an issue, and evidently was an issue.
Figure that the name carries a certain responsibility, and like ethics to it. But
this is not like Hitler Diaries, where people were buying what became known as being fake.
But that's just the problem. It wasn't just Hobby Lobby. The University of Cornell also had like several thousand pieces.
But the weird thing about the whole thing is that this is Hobby Lobby.
Yeah.
And they're buying. And, once I kind of went through and read some of the article, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So.
Yeah. But what this brought to mind was the fact that there was so much that was in Iraq, Egypt, over, I want to say in the early 2000s, the early 2010s, that so much of it left and went through and got sold off. People can't track this stuff, and some of these museums in these home countries want these items back, and they have no way of doing it.
The artifacts forfeiture is part of a sweeping effort to return around 17,000 archaeological objects looted during the decades of instability spurred by the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to say, I think it's more than just the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq. Yeah. Because when it comes to like Egypt and antiquities, more artifacts were actually sold by Egyptians to organizations than were taken away. So, but I get what they're saying, though. Yeah. The instability in the area. So a lot of these antiquities or artifacts were basically sold, right, in a museum. The Iraqi museum in Baghdad alone, they lost like some 15,000 treasures.
Yeah.
So they want them back.
And
okay, well, that's cool.
The problem is you have these authentic, very valuable to humanity, all of society, all of civilization. You have these very valuable artifacts, and they're just being passed off through private sales through Christie's.
Well, you know what they say, right?
What?
Buyer beware.
True.
Because they had their own controversy back in 2020 when they bought a whole bunch of, like, what was believed to be parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
And they turned out to be fake.
Yep. They were like fake Dead Sea Scrolls. So,
but they've been fighting this for a couple years now. A Hobby Lobby. They've been fighting over turning it over, and it wasn't until a week ago that they finally were like, "Okay, I guess the DOJ can get it from us."
Well, here's the thing: Department of Justice. I get why they're involved because this is, but at the same time, though, you know, if you bought something and you thought it to be legal and legit, and you spend a lot of money, and now all of a sudden, oh, you got to give it back. I want to know proof. Like, you need to prove to me that, you know, at the end of the day, that what you're saying is good as well, because you've already been duped.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you buy something. Let's go back to the pawn store, right? You buy something from a pawn store, a pawn shop, right? And somebody comes up and says, "Oh, you got to return that because it's stolen." You need to prove to me that it's stolen, man. Because what's to keep you from stealing it? Because I've already been, I've already been fooled once. You're not going to fool me again.
But see, this just speaks to the larger issue of smuggling, mysterious items, mysterious sales. And I just realized we didn't do our 14 term of the day, which was Men in Black, and how they can be tied into stuff like this, where you may buy something of significance and then suddenly somebody shows up to retrieve it. The problem with these are there's so much authentic stuff and so much fake stuff.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Men in Black.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Smithsonian, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Smithsonian, I don't know if we should talk about it. They might come knock on our door. Let's just do this. If you're ever bored and you're looking for something to kind of look up giants in the Smithsonian
and
Institute.
How
you find some giant stuff, magically they will show up and take it from you.
And yes, some of those
this is completely not proven either, but
yeah, some of those documents have been debunked. Some of those news articles have been debunked. Some haven't.
I don't know. The Smithsonian.
Yeah.
That's like anyway.
However, one thing that's disturbing is 5% of the artifacts, over 5% of the artifacts bought by Hobby Lobby and other entities that were said to be from ancient Mesopotamia were found to be fake.
Well, yeah.
And that's reminiscent to a lot of the scandals in the 50s in New Mexico, where it was rife with fakes and doctored artifacts and things like that.
Well, it's not just New Mexico. It's Arizona. Yeah. It's all those. I mean, okay, so having been to Egypt.
Yeah.
Do you know how many rare artifacts I could have bought when I was in Egypt?
A lot. Go
down any side street as like a bazaar. You can find all sorts of ancient antiquities because the people there would sell you stuff that was obviously created by. They were not artifacts, you know what I mean? But that was the idea, is that you wanted something from ancient Egypt, right? So you'd buy like papyrus scrolls and stuff, and they weren't ancient by any means. But I get it, and the whole idea is that you're buying an antiquity, a priceless artifact, and you're going to,
But this makes me. The reason I put this in was okay. It's one thing to go to the Victorian era, like the 1920s, 1930s, where people who traveled to Egypt could pick up a mummy jar and stuff like that. Things that were obviously not a good idea. But now we have these big organizations buying purported artifacts. First off, why do they need them? Second, how much money do these people have to invest in these artifacts? And
well, here's what I would say. Who cares? They can buy what they want. At the end of the day, I'm a capitalist. If you got the money and you want to buy it, go for it.
Yeah, but I also have a tinfoil hat. I'm like, are they?
Well, you do, but I mean,
is every ball of yarn purchased at Hobby Lobby to, resurrect something?
Well, okay, so you already said in the beginning that they have a museum.
Yeah.
right? And so if they have a museum, wouldn't you want to put like artifacts in the museum?
Yeah.
So there you go. Who cares?
I know, but
it's not like they're buying stuff and they're going to, sell it on.
The Epic of Gilgamesh deserves to be like in a much.
It deserves to be in a museum? Yeah.
It deserves to be in like the Smithsonian, not some.
Why does it need to be in the Smithsonian? Shouldn't it be maybe in a museum of the country of origin?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, hey, at the end of the day, who cares?
Okay.
Because what they bought was evidently fake.
Some of it.
Or not fake. We don't know. They bought it. It sounds like from the article that they thought they were buying it legally to display in their museum. It wasn't like they were buying it so you could buy a little piece on their website or something like that.
And I was trying to find the other articles that talked about.
There's nothing that really says what their intentions was. Maybe their intention was to preserve that in a way in their museum so that you could see it and so it could be, seen as a priceless artifact. Maybe they thought they were doing good. But who cares,
see, I know of like religious organizations who have taken that step.
Well,
but
that sounds like what they were doing because Hobby Lobby founder David Green, right, was trying to put it in their Museum of the Bible.
Yeah.
Which is an institution funded by the family of Hobby Lobby founder David Green. So, okay. It's not like, I don't know. I think it's unfortunate that they thought that they bought something, whatever. But, in a lot of ways, the whole idea of buying artifacts from other countries may be a little distasteful to you like you think it is. And I'd be inclined to agree. Like, when they took King Tut and Egyptian stuff, I think is some of the most stuff that's just been misrepresented or misappropriated or, you know what I mean? Like King Tut went on tour.
I know. Yeah.
But and that goes back to that legend, that urban lore where there was a museum of, that was, waiting on the arrival of an ancient pharaoh sarcophagus, and it was going over a bridge somewhere in Texas. It went over. Uh-huh. And later on, that pharaoh came back to life and was basically going and sucking the souls out of these old people in a geriatric place. You know what I mean?
Stop.
What's a geriatric? What do you call that place? Like a resting home. Had these four old guys in there.
Oh God!
And just happened to be that in that resting home, that senior center place, was basically Elvis and JFK. Right, and they were kind of in hiding.
Are you done?
Well, if you want to watch it, it's a based on a true story. It's called Bubba Hotep.
I swear to.
See, that's what would make this story more interesting to me.
What's interesting to me is the fact that large organizations are buying up things that are considered important to the beginnings of human civilization. That's what bothers me.
Well, hey, during World War II, there was a certain organization that was going around just blatantly.
I tried to find some other organizations that had been mentioned in the past couple of weeks and couldn't find anything other than University of Cornell, who has kept very tight-lipped as to what exactly they purchased.
I think a lot of art like this and things that could be considered art and antiquities and things like that are typically sold and bought and sold. They don't really make any kind of real news to anything, because it's sort of kept secret, like secret art dealer type stuff.
I don't know. And I'm going back
This made the news because it's Hobby Lobby.
Indiana Jones, like there's some secret, the Ark of the Covenant being traded around.
Yeah, like some kind of like quasi-secret organization gathering art stuff, like somebody like the Smithsonian maybe?
Like the Warehouse 13.
Kind of. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird, And then I like how you followed up with Iraq claims 17,000 looted articles of historic importance.
Yeah.
They're getting their stuff back.
Yeah.
They've reclaimed it, like cuneiform tablets and other stuff. Which is part of the whole Hobby Lobby thing. So That's cool. All right, so anyway, let's move back into the podcast a little bit and talk about something that's just as important and to some people. And I thought this was kind of funny.
What's important?
It's more of a...
Nuggets?
Yeah, because this 2-hour car chase ends with chicken nuggets.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, when you think of car chases, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at the car chases and you're like, oh, man, it's a high-speed chase. What's going on? They had these TV shows for a while. It's like, worst traffics and best car, all this crazy stuff on TV, right? Mm-hmm. A woman drives on this 2-hour police chase, right? She was finally arrested after she stopped at a McDonald's drive-thru for chicken nuggets in the middle of that police chase. She just gave up.
Just let me get some nuggets before I get hauled off to
She's
jail.
like, I'm hungry. We've been in a 2-hour chase. I'm going to get me some snacks, right?
Yeah.
So, and the cool thing is that this woman was arrested at McDonald's drive-thru in Worcester, Massachusetts. Worcester. Which is basically, when you look at it and you're like, is that Worcester? No, it's Worcester, right? Worcester, Mass, after she stopped there for chicken nuggets in the middle of a wild police chase. And this is according to Boston.com.
Yeah.
So, Johanna Gardell, a 38-year-old from Massachusetts, was being chased by cops following reports of a stolen vehicle. So the cops chased Gardell, who refused to pull over for around 2 hours. And during the chase, she ran red lights, drove in the wrong direction. She rammed into several other vehicles, including 2 police cruisers. And sadly, a police officer was hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries after she hit and dragged them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she was eventually located at a McDonald's drive-thru using the stolen truck's GPS tracking device. She was ordering chicken nuggets, and they actually held her up. So she tried to escape the cops, but ended up in the flower bed. So, and she hit a cop.
Shake machine's broken.
Yeah.
Chicken nugget machine's broken.
Well, so she was being held without bail. But I just think it's, she's in the middle of a police chase. Oh, sure am hungry. Let me stop and get some nuggets.
She tried to escape the cops, but as the owner of the vehicle said, she had ended up in a flower bed. Gardell had hit a cop before being apprehended.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, 15 charges.
That's what she gets.
Yeah. I hope she at least got a 20-piece.
She probably didn't even get a chance to eat them.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Because I actually seen something on TikTok where this lady was eating nuggets and she wound up getting arrested. Like, they got her out of the car. I wonder if it's the same person.
Oh, that'd be great.
But, I don't know. But I just thought that was kind of funny. I looked at it. It's like, what? She was in a high-speed chase. Had to stop and get a little snack. So, I don't know. That's nice. That's nice. All right, so I think at this point we're going to take a quick break on the old CreepGeeks podcast, and we'll be right back.
Audible is audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, listeners of CreepGeeks Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/cheapgeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, so, this is the time of year. It's a little strange for this year, but last year didn't really happen quite so much because of things that were going on that are evidently still going on. But, hey, they have these conferences and conventions and stuff like that where you can go find and learn about Bigfoot and get a $35 t-shirt, right? Mm-hmm. Or another sort of thing. They're conferences, right? Cons.
Yeah.
You got like Comic-Con, you got like Cryptid Con, you got all these cons that you can go to. And, with the way it was last year, most all of them were canceled.
Yeah.
This year, a lot of them are back. And so people are going to start going out and going to them. And we do these. We go to them too.
Yeah.
We set up a little booth, and we have swag and stuff like that for the podcast. We also have I wouldn't call it memorabilia. Is it called memorabilia, I guess? We just call it swag. We have little knickknacks and stuff like that related to the subject matter of the conference
swag,
we're at.
Gifts, stickers, and items to support the show.
Yeah. Well, since we, we do these, see, I don't want to jinx anything because I feel like we're going back into the way we were before, like 2020. But since we do these, there's a couple of them that we have decided to do this year, whereas last year we did a whole bunch, and one of them is coming up.
2019 we did a whole bunch.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Last year we did 2.
Yeah, 2020 was terrible, man. It's not a good time for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we've already done one this year, which is not really a whole lot compared to what we did in 2019, but there are more events coming. And one of the ones that's coming, it's in Western North Carolina, is the Western North Carolina Bigfoot Festival.
Yep.
Which we will be there. So I don't really have a whole lot to say about it just yet because it's coming in September, but it's a good idea to plan ahead of time because if you're in Western North Carolina, you may also hear it referred to as the Marion Bigfoot Festival.
Yep. And this year is going to be Friday, September 17th and Saturday, September 18th. Friday, September 17th, I think is more of like an afternoon thing with VIP stuff going on. September 18th, that's a big festival. That's a big part with lots of stuff going on. Lots of vendors, lots of speakers.
Saturday is going to be the time to go.
Yeah.
So if you want to walk around and see things for free, and I mean, it's going to be where there's like hundreds of vendors there and lots of speakers and learning about Sasquatch and Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That's the time to go. The first year they had it, it was supposed to be like some crazy number of people that were there.
Yeah. Friday is an educational expo.
Right.
So, and I believe there's going to be a community event this year. They have ramped it up. Considering last year got canceled due to everything that happened in 2020.
Yeah.
This year, they're getting more of the community involved, so you'll see more interaction with different small businesses and different organizations in the area. Friday is more of like a hands-on educational expo, and then Saturday, that's the main stage events. That's where they'll have speakers and people coming up to talk about stuff. And,
yeah. Saturday's got main stage events on the main stage. So, if you're going to be in Western North Carolina or anywhere around Western North Carolina, you want to go to basically a free Bigfoot festival that actually has a lot of people going to it, you should check it out.
Yeah.
They're going to have things like satellite parking and stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about trying to park on a small, main street type thing. You're going to have like satellite bus services there, I think.
So you can go to the website, which is linked in the show notes. They're going to have all sorts of speakers there, including She-Squatchers, which we just saw at Gatlinburg.
Yep.
Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. Per Marion, North Carolina tradition, there will be a Bigfoot calling contest at 2 p.m. So,
and a costume contest. You can come dressed like Sasquatch. And if you'd like to sample some Bigfoot poop, you can certainly do that. Because, it says whether you're a foodie interested in trying Bigfoot poop, which is a baked delicacy from one of the downtown Marion bakeries, or you have an interest in art and want to stroll along downtown Marion's self-guided Bigfoot mural trail, because they paint the windows of the shops and stuff like that, there's something for everyone. So you should kind of check it out. And, we'll be there.
Yep.
So we did.
We'll have a little booth set up so you can come, say hi to the show, maybe grab a sticker, or share a Bigfoot or any other paranormal high strangeness experience with us.
Yes.
I do also want to mention, since this is in downtown Marion, you are supporting a lot of small organizations, small businesses. MACA, which is McDowell Arts Council Association, they'll have some handmade Bigfoot stuff from local artists in the area. So that's probably going to be a good place to check out too.
Yeah, and you could actually sneak by there if you're in the area. I would go that Friday.
Yeah.
So if you want to go get stuff from the MACA, go there Friday.
Yeah.
And sneak in there and buy up all the good stuff.
Because I've already snuck by, so I already know
Yeah.
what everybody's going to have.
Yeah. So it's going to be some. All right. So anyway, there you go. So we have a lot of good stuff that's kind of upcoming. So we have some more events that are coming up for us, but that's one of the ones I think is the closest and probably going to be the biggest in this particular area for sure. So
I have cabin fever. I want more events if we can do them, and I really want to see some of the bigger ones. So if people know of good ones, I want to know about them,
Yeah.
And these are ones that we would be able to get into. I mean, we're already in pretty much the middle of the year, end of summer. So trying to go to more events to meet more people and meet more fans and meet more listeners and meet more cool people, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, this year, the way it is, we picked like 5 big events to go do.
yeah.
In 2019, we did like every event. We did like
26.
28 total. We did like 28 of them. And, you know, some of them had like 100 people there and some of them had like 1,000 people there.
We were like, oh.
So, you know, it kind of is what it is. But, you know, at least with the, what I like about the Marion Bigfoot thing is it's free, man. If you can get there, you can go there. Yeah. In other words, if you can get to the place and park, you don't have to worry about admission costs and stuff like that. And they have stuff for the kids. And it's just generally a good way to stroll down Main Street and kind of see any and everything Bigfoot related. So it should be good. But yeah, if you guys know of any local events or just events in general that you would like to kind of share with us, let us know. So
yeah.
I mean, some towns have like little small festivals that, you know, maybe people should know about.
I know. I'd like to see more of those.
Yeah.
You know? So.
And we're not talking about like the world's biggest peanut or oldest peanut. We're talking about, you know, just like interesting stuff.
Yeah, like.
Although we have seen the world's oldest peanut.
But.
And ham.
Like 2020 really took a toll on things. Like I found out one of the UFO festivals that happens up north, they're not going on this year again just because that sort of stuff. So I want to know, what do you guys have going on?
Yeah.
You know?
Who knows? I kind of think that's about it.
Yep. And if you do have a suggestion, contact at CreepGeeks.com. So
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast. In this particular episode has been lots of stuff and kind of a little bit meandering there, but really what it boils down to is there's all sorts of stuff that you can kind of take a look at and see and educate yourself, maybe if you want to, or if you have more of just a passing interest in the whole 410, which includes like, you know, UFOs and cryptids and paranormal stuff. You should definitely check out Small Town Monsters.
Yeah.
They have a ton of stuff, which is pretty nice. And, you know, On the Trail of UFOs, the Dark Sky series, really enjoyed that. That was pretty good. And it's like your camera guy number 3, man. You're in it.
Yeah.
So pretty good. All right.
So,
you got anything?
thank you guys for tuning in this episode. Be sure to check us out on social media. We do have a fairly active Instagram and TikTok, as well as our Facebook presence. Also, shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you for keeping the podcast going. If you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, we have a link in the show notes.
Yes.
That's about it.
All righty. Anyway, there you go. Join us next time. So see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.